Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Ask Her series. My name is Sarah Weatherby, and I am the Director of Communications for Washington Area Women's Foundation. For those of you that do not know about the foundation, we are a community-supported organization that invests in the power of women and girls of color in the Washington, D.C. region. We do our work through grant making and advocacy, and we, along with our partners, are intentional about centering the voices and lived experiences of women and girls of color to influence policymakers and philanthropy as it relates to gender and racial equality. At this time, we would like to welcome each and every one of you joining us today, including our American Sign Language interpreters, Candace Lane and Candace Gordon. If you like what you hear today, we encourage you to share the recording with your network by using hashtag AskHerSeries, and be sure to follow us across all social media platforms at Washington Area Women's Foundation to stay informed about our latest happenings. Black women are the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs in the U.S., yet they face disproportionate hardships that are rooted in both systemic sexism and racism, often resulting in a lack of funding options and opportunities to succeed. Here to moderate this important conversation around the power of Black women entrepreneurs, I'm excited to introduce Washington Area Women's Foundation's Interim President and CEO, Jacquelyn Lendsey. Welcome, Jackie, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I want to welcome all of you who have joined us for this important conversation on the power of Black women entrepreneurs. It is important in this time, in this day and age, but certainly it's an important conversation for those of us who are women of color, and especially for the Washington Area Women's Foundation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Gay and Ramunda Young. Elizabeth Gay is a multifaceted social entrepreneur working for Black women and people of color. Her lived experience as a Black woman in the United States drives her to fight injustice and create a more equitable world. Elizabeth is the founder of Ìpàdé, DC's first, and let me say that again, DC's first co-working space and community of support that's designed for Black women and femmes of color, entrepreneurs, professionals, and creatives. She's the founder of Sisu Consulting, where she works with initiatives focused on communities of color. And she's also co-founder of the Black Mamas Matter Alliance. And I'm going to say it over and over again, but she has founded DC's first co-working space for our community, and certainly designed to support Black women and femmes of color. Our other panelist joining us today is Ramunda Young. Ramunda is the owner of MahoganyBooks, and I'm hoping many of you are familiar with MahoganyBooks. It's a nationally recognized and award-winning independent bookstore co-founded with her husband, Derek. The bookstore is the premier destination for books written by and about people of African descent, with physical locations in historic Anacostia in DC and National Harbor in Prince George's County, Maryland. As a sought-after speaker and panelist who focuses on the crucial importance of Black books and literacy in the community, Ramunda teaches women through Ramunda Young Group, LLC, to build successful business relationships that increase sales and self-confidence. She is a proud alumna of Langston University and Leadership Prince William, and as a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So I want to welcome both Ramunda and Elizabeth to our panel today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask questions of both of you, but my first question is to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you're the founder and owner of Ìpàdé, DC's first co-working space and community of support for Black women and femmes of color. Can you tell us about the why behind launching your business and how Ìpàdé is improving and transforming the lives of Black women in our community?
Thank you so much for having me today and for hosting this webinar. It's an honor to be included and to join Ramunda, who I've been following for some time. Ìpàdé is, first I'll explain what Ìpàdé is. It's a word from the West African Yoruba language that conveys a sense of gathering or coming together. And so Ìpàdé is meant to be our safe space to gather, to co-work, to connect, to network with each other, and to build and create those things for our community that we're passionate about. I remember very vividly sitting in another co-working space in Georgetown that was just for women, the Wing. That location is closed now, but I remember sitting with a friend and being amazed at the space and imagining what would it be like to have a beautiful space that was just for us, full of women of color, full of Black women, Indigenous, Latinx women, non-binary and gender expansive people. What would it be like? How rich and rewarding would that be? So I decided to create, and I started prior to the pandemic looking for a space, but the idea and intention really was to have a space that where we could feel comfortable, where we could breathe easy, we could let our guard down, and that space didn't exist. There was no space that centered Black women. There was no space that prioritized Black women and people of color. And so I think Ìpàdé has done that. We've helped people have a place that they can come and they can let their guard down. They can show up as their true selves, as their whole selves. You know, there's racism, there's sexism, all the isms that folks of color face. And here there's, you know, you get some breathing room. You don't have to experience all those isms.
Oh, thank you. Ramunda, I'm going to ask you the same question. You, along with your husband, Derek, are the owner and co-founder of MahoganyBooks, a Black-owned and family-run bookstore that promotes reading, writing, and cultural awareness for the Black community. Why MahoganyBooks? Can you tell us more about your business and then how MahoganyBooks is enriching both the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area and perhaps even nationally? But why?
Jacquelyn, why not MahoganyBooks? And I say that jokingly, but seriously, why not have a space dedicated to our history, our stories, our experiences? So often we are just overwhelmed with experience that center on slavery or on civil rights, but there's so much more to Black people, to us, to our kids. And so why not have that space? I've come from a background in books. I worked for the biggest box bookstore, to Howard University bookstore, to an independent bookstore. And throughout my career, when I worked at that big box bookstore chain, I didn't see us reflected. I'll just be honest. Mm-hmm. And so having the opportunity, having the dream, having a husband who has a vision about what that looks like to create a space that centers us was crucial. I was tired of going into spaces and seeing even the decor, even the music not reflect who I am, but yet I pay taxes here, yet I am an upstanding citizen, yet I'm a part of this community. So having a space dedicated to us, pardon me, why not? And so for us, creating MahoganyBooks, man, 15 years ago now, we started online at that time in our 1-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, with a computer and an idea about making Black books accessible. And we did it online because we didn't even have the money for a space, for a team, for employees. I'll just be honest, that money was not there, you know. It was always our dream to have a physical space, but online allowed us to reach the widest possible group of people at the lowest amount of cost and capital. So online was the way we started out. And neither one of us had experience in internet sales, building a website. You talk about starting from zero, that's where we were. But the dream was so much bigger than our experience, was so much bigger than our lack of understanding that we found the ways. And I'm not saying it was without any hurdles, but we found those ways to make it happen. It was just that important to us. It was just that important for us to see our daughter Mahogany reflected on those pages. And so that was 15 years ago. Those first 10 years we were online, and then fast forward to actually 5 years ago now, we opened up Anacostia. And we opened up in a community that had not had a bookstore in over 20 years. And you think of the list of the most literate cities and the cities with the highest education, DC was on that list. But yet in one of those neighborhoods, a bookstore was not even there. And there's bookstores all over Washington, DC, but this particular community did not have one. And for us, that was a travesty. Why not? Those people work hard. Those people pay taxes. Those people go to schools. Those people strive and do great things, but they did not have something that was part of what we kind of really say is part of Americana, so to speak, a bookstore, reading. And so for my husband and I, it was important for us to put our stamp right there in that community. He grew up in Anacostia. He grew up in Southeast Washington, D.C., but that community, again, was deserving. So it was not that it was not easy to do, but it was worth doing. And so I know we'll talk about a little bit more about that journey, but that's kind of the trajectory. And then actually just a little bit over a year ago, we opened up our National Harbor store, as you mentioned earlier. And that has just been a game changer for us too. Again, our whole motto is how do we make Black books accessible no matter where you are, from online to communities in DC and to other communities, hopefully around the world. That's our goal. But it's been important to us just staying focused on why Black books matter. And they matter because our stories matter, our journeys matter, and our experiences matter.
I love that. I'm a native Washingtonian, and I used to live in Southeast, and I still have a home in Southeast, and I used to work in an organization that did a lot of work in Anacostia. And so I know exactly what you mean when you talk about the lack of a Black bookstore in that community. And Elizabeth, I know what you mean when you talk about the lack of an opportunity for women of color and femmes to get together in a safe space that is designed just for them. So the both of you with this concept of designing spaces that are provide information and education, that highlight Black authors, but that also provide a safe space for our community or provide space in our communities. It's just so key to why I think both of you are so important to this conversation, and also so key to why I think both of you, the concepts, the what you've done from brick and mortar perspective is doing a lot for our communities. Elizabeth, I want to ask you about resources and opportunities. The Women's Foundation works to provide resources and opportunities that improve the lives of women and girls of color in our community. As a business owner with similar values, can you talk about the specific programs and opportunities that Ìpàdé creates for women of color and femmes?
Yes, definitely. So I tend to think of our programming in two parts. The first being professional business development, and the second being social and networking and connection. So I'll provide a few key examples that illustrate those 2 points. So a really good example of the professional and business development type of programming that we do is a workshop that we just had last month with someone who's a part of our community, Shanae Seifert-Haynes. She facilitated a workshop called Grow Beyond the Hustle. And that was a really great opportunity for folks to, for the participants to understand how they could become more efficient and effective in marketing and reaching their target customers, so that they're talking to the right audience and releasing some of that grind hustle culture, right? They're not burning themselves out, spinning their wheels, trying to just do things to get people, to come into their sphere, into their space, but that they're working as smart as they can to reach the right people. So we have workshops like that. And then we also have, as I mentioned, the social opportunities. We've done a collaboration with Colored Girls Liberation Lab. They are a really cool initiative that I think started during the pandemic with Clubhouse conversations. And so they were able to gather their community in person for the first time in our space at Ìpàdé. So that means a lot to me, to be able to have those safe spaces, again, where folks that have been having these really rich conversations online can bring that dialogue together in person. We've done afternoon teas with Colored Girls Liberation Lab, and we're also doing our holiday celebration, right, with them. It's an opportunity for people to celebrate what they've accomplished this year, to celebrate their achievements, big and small, to celebrate themselves, no matter what they've done, just who they are, right? We're not asking people to constantly produce, we're asking them to be themselves, and that's valid and that's worth everything. So we want to celebrate and acknowledge that. So we're having the holiday party on December 17th. And the great thing about that is it's not just an opportunity, it's not just something that's great for the people who are attending. Yes, it'll be fun, hopefully they have a really great time, but we're also contributing part of the proceeds to an organization called Justice for Black Girls, which provides social justice education for Black girls, I think between the ages of 12 and 18. So, everything we do, we're at Ìpàdé, we're thinking about how can this contribute more broadly to our community and to the people that we care about. So not only are we lifting up the people within our space, but by doing that, bringing folks together, helping them be productive in our space, make those connections, we know that we're contributing to our communities more broadly and society overall.
Can you describe just a little bit how people use your space? Are there workspaces? Are there separate rooms? I've seen it, but can you describe it?
Yeah, there are. It's a really comfortable, cozy space for people to get work done. So we do have a few private offices where people pop in and sit at the desk and get their work done that they need to during the day. We also have a conference room where we host meetings. We have a screening room. People can watch films, host gatherings with their friends or with other professionals in that space. And then people are also able to rent out the full venue for their own private gatherings, for retreats, we've had bridal showers, we've had people take photos here. It's a really beautiful space. And it has a really great energy. So I encourage everyone to come visit us so you can get to know it in person. Everyone walks in and they say the pictures don't do it justice, but it's really a great space, and it's a multi-purpose space. So it helps people be productive, but it's also, like I said, a gathering space where we can help start our own events and those things that are important to us.
And as a woman of color, I can say it's a colorful space. It's a space that does justice to all of the colors and thoughts that we have about ourselves, and it just shines when you see the space. Ramunda, you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, when you were talking about starting out online in your apartment in Alexandria with just you and your husband. And you've grown from that online business to an entity that is the premier destination for books when it comes, and for individuals when it comes to books from people of color, from African Americans or from Africans. And you've done 600 book events, and I've been to a couple of them. So it's amazing, including book events that took place during the pandemic. I have to give you kudos for being able to make that happen during the pandemic, both virtually and then in person. Can you talk a little bit about what it took to scale up from being around your kitchen table when you started 15 years ago to where you are today with 2 stores in 2 strategic places in this community, both in Anacostia and in Prince George's County?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's not just one thing that, we can pinpoint and say, this thing here is what made it happen. I'll be transparent. It was a lot of prayer. It was a lot of self-doubt and overcoming that self-doubt to know that we could do it. That's what got us here, right? A lot of saving. We went to different banks. We went to different places to get funding and did not get any of that funding, right? Because the question we got, hit with most, well, there's another big online behemoth out there. Why are you wanting to start an online business? Why do you want to start, a bookstore, And so overcoming, even from a financial aspect, the idea that we had in our minds and knowing other people didn't see that vision, we had to overcome that. And it was a lot of self-talk. A lot of people ask this question, they want to hear all these fundamental things, and this is what we did. And those were part of it. But I want to really impress upon people, it was a lot of us believing in ourselves that got us to scale to where we are. When a lot of the naysayers said, why a bookstore? We even had the question of, do Black people read? And so to hear those type of things, when you have a vision, when you have been given something to execute on, we had to overcome a lot of that self-talk. But from some of the fundamentals, again, savings, we took a risk on ourselves. We did not have a huge savings, a nest egg at that time. My husband and I sat down one night and we just talked about, where's this money going to come from? We had this dream. We had been doing it all this time with our full-time jobs and then working late into the hours for a dream that we had. And we said, we agreed to take the money from our 401k at that time. That was 15 years ago. I was a lot younger than I am now. So it was more taking that risk was something that for us made sense, but we not emptied the 401k, but we took a heck of a lot out of that 401k because we believed in what we did. And even if this did not last 5 years or 2 years or 10 years, we knew at this time that we had to make that jump. We had to make that decision. We had to bet on ourselves. And so when we didn't get the funding from a lot of other places, we took it, upon ourselves to do that. And bootstrap our own business. We recently, just after 15 years, received funding, and it was grants. We've gone through the pandemic, as you mentioned, but the initial funding for probably 14 years of our business, and we've been in business for 15, came from us. And actually, a good friend of ours gave us a loan after we had already opened up Anacostia and said, you know what, I believe in what you're doing. And he gave us a small loan as well. So that was part of our bootstrapping process, from starting online into now, but also just building connections and building a network helped us to scale up. When a lot of people who didn't look like me said no to our vision, we had to surround ourselves with people who did believe in that vision. That helped us scale up, because if we were always being poured into by people who doubted it, that would not help us see the expansion that we knew we could experience. And so just changing our tribe, and not all of it, there are some people that are still with us, but we had to really be careful, really be protective of what we heard, what we were around, what we saw, and what people fueled us. And that helped us scale up, right? Just protecting our thoughts, protecting our mind. But also getting in those circles again, where people had been exposed to business. I had never been in a 7-figure arena with other people, but getting around those people who have had those experiences, how to manage payroll, how a 5-figure payroll, how to manage employees, how to manage a team, those surroundings, those candid conversations of people being able to talk about their failures, but also their successes, really helped us to say this is possible for us. But a lot of it, my husband went to school for business. I went to school for business. So a lot of it came from our HBCUs. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Bowie State, my husband's HBCU, and shout out to Lendsey University, my HBCU, and realizing, early on that there was a lot of stigma around HBCUs, but realizing, no, we have come from a great place. We are prepared to take on a business. We do have the tools we need to succeed. And it came from those foundations at our school. So that helped us scale. Just again, I'm talking the self-talk piece really impacted us. The money, of course, helped us to scale up. But those experiences and exposure to other people who had been where we wanted to go was a huge determining factor for us.
I loved your surrounding, your comment when you said surround yourself with those who believe in you, those who share your vision. And I also loved your shout out to HBCUs in terms of where you got those first senses, that business sense or that first sense of this is something it's possible. But you also mentioned something that I think relates to both of you, and that is not just Black businesses and startups, but Black entrepreneurs, especially women, face disproportionate barriers to success when starting and running their businesses, including inequitable access to capital, as you talked about, Ramunda, resources and opportunities. Can you, both of you, discuss some challenges you faced as a Black woman entrepreneur, and what steps have you taken to overcome those challenges? And I guess we'll start with you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'm like listening and processing everything Ramunda said, because I'm like, yes, like that's it. Access to capital has been my greatest challenge, and I think for so many Black women entrepreneurs and the folks that are even participating in Ìpàdé, also hear similar things, that it really comes down to funding, to financial resources, and the capital that they need to get started. It just came to me that one of the things I did to launch Ìpàdé was crowdfunding. And so that was an opportunity for people who believed in me to show that with their dollars. So, it's one thing to have people say nice supportive things like, I'm here for you, I support you. And it's another for them to actually put their money into something that doesn't even exist yet, right? This was, I was raising on I Fund Women in 2020 and into 2021 during the middle of a pandemic. And so imagine asking people in such an uncertain time and challenging time to put their money up to support something that, they didn't know if it was actually going to happen, but they trusted me, they believed in me enough to put their money forward. So that's one way I overcame the initial challenge around startup financing, but it also was, like Ramunda shared, your own bootstrapping, putting your own personal funds on the line, which I also did to bring this space to life. The money from crowdfunding quickly ran out. And so it is taking that leap of faith, trusting in yourself enough, and taking that risk. I'm not going to say it's not a risk, it is, but there are, it's a risk that's worth the potential reward. So I'm losing your question, but I just wanted to share that because, yes, finances are a big hurdle, but there are some options.
Yeah, no, and you didn't lose the question. You did a great job of talking about challenges and in terms of those challenges, what steps you took to overcome them. And I think the whole notion of crowdfunding is quite an interesting, we could go on and on about that topic and how that could be success for others who are interested in starting business. But I think the other thing you said is, but it doesn't last forever. So, where do you go next? But Ramunda, what about you? What challenges, you started your business with your husband, but what challenges have you faced as a Black woman entrepreneur? And then what steps did you take to overcome them?
Absolutely. Finances will always rise to the top, I believe, for us, because it takes capital to create and execute on an idea. I can sit here all day with my laptop, but if I don't have money to pay for the Wi-Fi service, if I don't have money to pay for the books, if I don't have money to pay for the technology needed to create it, then I'm sitting here with my laptop. So for us, capital was the biggest thing. When I think of the hurdle as a woman, a lot of the time it was just being in the room, having access to be in the room. Even though our niche is Black books, the publishing industry is tremendously white. And so how do we get to the table? How did I get into some of those conversations when the audience did not look like me? And it was befriending people who were white, who were of other nationalities, and say, hey, I have a valuable and valid idea. I feel like I should be at this table. And even coming to them and I don't want to say begging, but saying, hey, look at me, was even this weird space to be in as a Black woman, knowing my worth, knowing the value, knowing what I felt like we brought to the table was something that we had to overcome. But just being in some of those rooms when it came to publishers, when we first started, every book that we had to buy had to be paid in advance. We didn't even know if the book was going to sell, but here we are. And my husband and I never had credit cards, probably until the last few years. And I say few like it's 3. So for 12 years, we've never even had a credit card in our business. We were just trying to do it without having any debt at all. And so buying a book, so taking money and robbing from this part to pay rent and really betting on ourselves to buy 200 books or 300. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars that we didn't really have. And so putting those type of funds together was a huge hurdle for us. I'm calling family, I'm texting friends and saying, hey, I believe in what we're doing. I believe in hosting this author. I believe it is so important to have a conversation in our community around wealth, around education, that our bookstore can help facilitate that. But we had to overcome this hurdle of funding. So that was huge. And again, like I mentioned, being in those rooms with publishers and say, hey, what about this Black bookstore? We can host this author. We can facilitate a signing with this author. We can have this conversation at our space. That was a huge hurdle because they were like, who Mahogany? Who are you? When there's all of these other reputable bookstores in the country. And here we are saying, no, we should be at the table. Give us a chance to. So those were hurdles that we had to overcome. And even to this day, it's a lot easier. But there's moments where, we still have to prove ourselves. And when I'll be honest, when I feel like we have to prove ourselves, I'll walk away from that. So I'm at a space now that there should not be any proving, not just for MahoganyBooks, but any Black woman, to be honest. We have a legacy, a trail of successes, of believing in ourselves, of being innovative, of being trailblazers. So if we have to prove ourselves to this day, I'm that conversation, that experience, that opportunity is not for Ramunda or Mahogany Books.
You know, I'm fascinated by what you just said in terms of proving yourself and the fact that you walk away. I mean, if you have to prove yourself, then that means that someone is denying your value as a Black woman. And if you have to do that on a regular basis, that begins to cut into you inside. It cuts into your inside to know you're doing that. And I'm sure, Elizabeth, the same feeling comes true. So I'm really pleased to hear you say, you know, that at this point in your life, you can walk away from it, knowing that it may mean losing a business or an opportunity, but it's better to do that than to be devalued. Is
And
basically what I hear you say.
Yes, it's scary though sometimes. It's not like we're making, $20 million right now. It can be scary, but my principles and my values are way more priceless than an opportunity, a six-figure opportunity, or to have our name in a chain of stores across the nation that did not align with who we are. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary as hell.
Yeah.
But it's more scary to go to sleep with myself or with my husband, knowing that we sold out ourselves for $1 for this exposure, for whatever. So yeah, it may sound easy on this conversation, but there are moments where it can be scary, but still knowing that we stand on that fuels us.
And for both of you, just the notion of being that scary feeling of knowing you're stepping out there on your own. But the things that you're sharing with our audience are those good, that knowledge that you gained having done this and the ways in which you were able to be successful in doing it, the challenges you face, but also some of those lessons learned that any one of us can take advantage of, and especially those who are joining us today for this session on the power of Black women entrepreneurs. I'd like to ask you your thoughts on the wealth gap, because both of you talk about having to go to your family and your friends and your 401k and your crowdfunding and whatever you had to do to begin or to move your idea forward. So in terms of your thoughts on the wealth gap, in what ways do you believe Black ownership can changes our trajectory for the better? And either one of you.
I felt like I was talking. I was trying to let Elizabeth go this time.
Oh, Elizabeth? No, go ahead.
So as far as the wealth gap.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not an expert on the wealth gap. I'll just say that at first, but I am aware that it has happened even before us, even in our existence. It has been part of our educational system. It has been part of not having access to great schools. That gap was created from slavery. Let's just be honest. It was created even then. And so when you talk about wealth and the inheritances that a lot of other people in communities receive, that gets passed down generation from generation, that was built upon our experiences, our work, our families. Having those inheritances, it's taxed even less than people who make income, who go to work. Receiving an inheritance is taxed less than us going to work. So can you imagine receiving an inheritance for one? Again, we know how that inheritance was created for a lot of these households. But then to be given that as a child, your experience and your ability to take chances, to be innovative, to create experiences, because you have those funds to fall back on, is tremendous. That widens the gap from inception. When you talk about the schools, that now that we've received that inheritance, for example, I'm just going to walk down that path. Mm-hmm. Now you have put yourself in an opportunity or in a situation to attend better schools that have books, the schools that have resources. That again attributes to the wealth gap as you continue to grow and matriculate as a child through school. So it started because of a lot of resources that were not given to us as Black people. And so entrepreneurship, to answer your question, is a tremendous way to impact that, because we don't have to rely on somebody else's approval or somebody else's opportunity. We have the space to create that opportunity now, even with the hurdles we talked about earlier. And so, yes, I think I know entrepreneurship, it creates a buffer between the wealth gap, but it takes a lot to even become an entrepreneur, as we talked about. A lot of us are going and applying for loans and being denied. So there's still systemic impacts to us even attaining wealth. But I do know that entrepreneurship is one of those windows that can help us get there and impact our families for generations to come.
Yeah, I'll just add, I absolutely agree with you that entrepreneurship and business ownership is one of those pathways. That's why I'm so passionate about helping the women business owners that are part of the Ìpàdé community get exposure, reach new customers, amplify their businesses, and grow their businesses. So one of the things that we started this past fall actually is what we call a makers market. And so people, women business owners in particular, are able to come share their goods with people in the neighborhood, with our community, with folks that are just interested in supporting women of color businesses. So that's one way that we're trying to address that wealth gap, right? Is pouring into women of color through their business, through increasing leadership, through increasing, by doing business development and those kinds of things.
This leads to sort of the question around how can we as a community, how can our community better invest in and show up for Black women and women-owned businesses? How can we do that? How can the community do that? Either one of you.
Yeah, support. And support is a myriad of ways. I'll take a prayer any day from somebody who really stands and believes in what we do. But of course, buying books and thinking twice. A lot of people think or say, I can buy this book at this X and X place for, a few dollars cheaper or many dollars cheaper, I'll be honest, versus coming to MahoganyBooks. And so people can support us by saying, you know what, because of what you guys do in the community, because of these experiences, because of these community conversations, because of this education that you provide, I'm going to put my dollars there. And yes, I may pay a few dollars more, but I know in my mind that even by paying a few dollars more, even the playing field is not even set up for you, right? To get and negotiate some of those lower prices. So I need people to really say, you know what, I'm going to be intentional with my dollars. I'm going to be intentional about sharing posts. Even if money is an issue, share a post, tell people to go to MahoganyBooks, come out to the events, even if you can't buy a book, be a part, be actively engaged. That is what people can do to support us time and time again, bringing their kids there. We get schools that come in and just shop or just come and be exposed to a space where they feel celebrated and seen. That is support for MahoganyBooks. But knowing people have options. We don't have to be just relegated to one or two bookstores. And not just MahoganyBooks, there's Black bookstores all across the nation. So even if you don't live here, I encourage people to shop and support other Black bookstores, other Black businesses like Ìpàdé. So there's a way to do it. Even if you don't have the coins to do it, it can be done.
I encourage everyone to buy Black where they can. So people are spending money on those things they need. For example, makeup. I like makeup. I like beauty and skincare products. It's something I got into 2018, 2019, the K-beauty, doing my 10-step routine. And so I was using these products from these big brands. And at a certain point, it clicked for me, why am I not just getting these products from Black-owned businesses, right? So wherever you find yourself spending money, wherever your money is going, there's a way to pivot to allot the whole budget or part of that budget to a Black-owned business. So I would ask for people to think about where they can shift those coins, those funds, to buy Black, to spend on Black women-owned businesses in lieu of bigger box businesses or national and global brands.
So we've been talking about you as businesswomen, and we've talking about how you got your businesses moving forward and the success of those businesses and the challenges. So now I want to find out, how do you find balance between running your business and your personal life?
I think that's a trick question, Jacquelyn. No, balance. I used to struggle with, finding the balance, making sure I was at home for Mahogany and making sure I was at home for my husband and making sure I had time for me and making sure I had time for my friends. So all of that, but I don't know if I've ever found balance, right? What I think I found is harmony. Mm-hmm. And balance to me looks like they're both equal. Harmony means they all work together in my mind. And so for me, being okay that I'm going to go get this massage, a 90-minute massage, and not do work today, right? Or I'm going to spend the time with my daughter. I'm going to be okay with that. It took a long time for me to be okay with those moments, I'll be honest, because we come from this space of grind, make it work, rise and grind, all of this. And there's a shift even afoot now to say, you know, I think there's a hashtag called soft life that's out there about, you know, it's okay to relax. It's okay to want to frolic and drink tea and relax in the middle of the day, right? That's not where we've come from. That's not what we know. That's not what we've been taught. And slavery is a huge part of why that happens. But for me, it's more about harmony. How do they all work together? And so I have an amazing husband. Everybody may not be in that space, but he encourages me to go take that time. I make time to go have brunch with my friends or have women over and friends over just to chat on a Friday afternoon. That's important to me. That fills me. And so I've not looked for balance. I've looked for harmony. And I've looked for experiences that really fill me up. And whether that's just, taking a trip with friends or my family, then that's what I'll do. But harmony is what I strive for. And it takes work. It takes planning. I'll be honest, when we first started, my husband would book an event or a meeting and I would be booking it at the same time. And we were just, you talk about confusion and both of us kind of out of whack at that time. It took a lot of communication. It took a lot of understanding to kind of create this harmony that we continue to strive for in our household. It's not perfect. It's still in progress. But I love that I'm at a space to where I can center me at times and not feel guilty about it.
Wow, Elizabeth.
Yes, I love this concept of harmony. So I'm going to be adopting that in my life. Another thing I've been working on is ease, having peace and the ease with the things that need to be done or the things that I'm doing, the way things are. And so that provides me an internal sense of what you might describe as balance, but just having a different mindset when it comes to all the things in life that add up. And there's a great tool that they use in psychology and in therapy called the life balance wheel. And so it shows you how they're, in different parts of your life, things might be, at one point in time, you might be more focused on work, or you might be more focused on personal and different aspects of your life. And what I'm learning is that this perfect balance is unrealistic. So it's really about being okay with things being imbalanced for some, when they need to be, right? Without losing your sense of health and well-being, and your satisfaction and joy, right? Because life is meant to be joyful, right? So, yeah, I would, ask people to take a look at the life balance wheel. But yeah, I'll also be thinking more about how I can have harmony in my life.
I love what both of you said, and I definitely love harmony as opposed to balance, which you're right. Balance looks like equals and harmony looks like, making it work. Harmony looks like how everything works together. Well, we want our audience to have a chance to ask questions, but I do have one last question for the both of you, and that is, how do you envision the future of your business and what do you want your legacy to be? So whoever wants to go first. Elizabeth?
Sure. I saw this question and I thought about it and I wasn't sure what I was gonna say, but as far as my legacy, something my personal life legacy is really about helping Black women and women of color achieve the lives that they want. So everything I do is about that. It's about lifting up Black women, women of color, investing in them, supporting them to achieve their ideal health and well-being. I have a public health background with a strong focus in maternal health. And so and advocacy on various social justice issues. And so through Ìpàdé, through other things that will come in the future, my goal is to make something better for Black women and for women of color. And so that's what I really want for Ìpàdé, is for every person who steps into this space to leave better somehow, right? To leave more supported, more energized, more inspired. And I think so far I'm doing that, but that's my goal.
Thank you. Ramunda?
I think when I look at legacy, I look at it in a couple of ways. One, professionally, When I think of Mahogany Books as a legacy, I want people to realize, Black and white, a lot of people think Black books are for Black people, they're for everybody. But I want that legacy to be that Black people were more than, slaves, or more than just going through civil rights, that we are dynamic, that we are not this monolith. And when people can read those stories, they are much better for it. When we read those stories, we are much better for it. So that's what I want Mahogany's books legacy to be, that when you have exposure to reading or to our stories, that you walk out and be more empowered. And when I think of Ramunda, my legacy as a woman, I want other women to know, man, this chick left and lived authentically her, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, from a little small town at that point, but comes from legacy, comes from Black Wall Street, comes from people who've overcome challenges. I want them to look at me and see, wow, she can show up authentically as herself, still be afraid in those moments, but overcome those moments. That's what I want my legacy to be. Because when I can do that, I can only imagine the other women that come behind me, who are afraid to make certain choices, who are afraid to make certain decisions, but can look at me and say, you know what, she did it. She did it, sometimes afraid, but she did it anyway. That to me would be like the cherry on top when I can reflect back on my life, that many other women can change and make a difference because they saw that's something that I did.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you both. We're at the end of the point where I get to ask all the questions. And we're now at a point where we can ask those who are joining us as our audience if they have any questions. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and then I will pose the question to both Elizabeth and to Ramunda. And while we're waiting for any questions in the chat, I have another one for you. And I would ask you, what's been the most rewarding moment for you as an entrepreneur?
I think for me, so before we secured our first like permanent space, in 2021 we did a few pop-ups, one in June and one in September, and from even those pop-ups, right, people were making connections, and that led to greater things. So people have started initiatives together, who met at our pop-up spaces. They've started businesses together. People got connected and became friends. And so seeing that, from just one day together, or, a 3-day pop-up, that's really rewarding to me, that I knew then that we were on the right track. We were on our right path because people were doing things that I had envisioned in the space. And so I know that when people come together in this space, greater things are going to happen. They're going to be able to see their long-term visions manifest in reality. And so that's something that's really rewarding for me as an entrepreneur, is seeing the things that I create then help other people create what they want to see in the world.
Ramona?
I would say one of kind of the shining moments for us, we've had a lot, it's been a blessing on this journey, but one really sticks out hugely in my mind, and that was being in the middle of the pandemic, right? And we closed our physical store for 10 months. From March until October, we were closed for the pandemic. And for us, one of our mantras is books, community, words, and you. And so to leave and lose that community that walked in our store, that felt comfortable in these conversations when we had these author events, to lose that was scary to me. And what do we do? How do we create that sense of community because of the pandemic, because people were locked in their homes, so to speak, for safety? But creating space online allowed us to create community again, especially when a lot of bookstores at the beginning were not doing that, did not move as quickly. We had been online all those years, so we didn't have to change our website as a lot of people had to do and create e-commerce and all that, but we could hone in on creating community online. And when I think about how many Black people were disproportionately impacted by Corona, for us, it was like crucial to create community because we were in our homes and a lot of us were in silos by ourselves. And so books allowed those exchanges to continue. And so online, sometimes we had 2,000 people from across the world engaging in a conversation with an author in the chat, talking about, oh, this, that resonates with me, or, oh, I didn't know you felt that way too. Online, So that to me was one of the greatest moments. When we look at the pandemic, we think, oh my gosh, but then I can look at the pandemic and think, oh my gosh, what we did. And so to me, that was a crowning moment to do month after month, event after event, and still create books, community, words, and you was something that I'll never forget, that we were able to do and still do now.
Wow. Again, if those of you who are a part of our audience, oh, I do have a question, please make sure you put it in the chat. And I'll go on with another question while we wait and see if anyone in the audience has a question. Are there any Black entrepreneurs who've inspired you and why? Both of you smile, so I know you have an answer to the question. Elizabeth.
I mean, the first person that comes to mind is someone like Oprah, right? But there are, that's very aspirational. You know, Oprah has had a long career. You know, she's a billionaire. And so it's like, yeah, you know, you want to be Oprah or have the success that she did and that she does. But sometimes that can feel out of reach. I would say I've looked up to folks who are more local to the DC area, like Ramunda at MahoganyBooks, like Nubian Human, like the Spice Suite, places that are closer to home, that show real examples of this is how you can get started, this is how you can grow, and this is how you can support your community. So those are the folks that I think about, you know, people that I can walk into their store and I'm like, oh, this is a Black woman's store. You know, she started it. I'm here and able to support her and you know, actually see a real person and connect with that person. So that's the initial thought I had.
Wow, Elizabeth, I agree with so many of those. The Spice Suite, Nubian Human, shout out to both of those sisters who are here in the DC area that we can reach out to and talk to and find out, you know, some of their journey. That's just been very helpful. But then I think of my dad, you know, I can't remember if the question said what Black woman inspired you or entrepreneurship.
Black entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so my dad went to the third grade in Oklahoma, only third grade when he moved to Oklahoma, but he'd been an entrepreneur all of his life. And so for me to grow up as a little Black girl to see someone who worked for themselves was huge. Who he inspired me to go get my little first box of chocolate from I think we went to I forgot what wholesale place to get, you know, candies. And I started selling candy in school and getting a feel of what it felt like to have my own money, to have a goal and to accomplish that goal, to use that money for something. So my dad inspired me because he had his own business for an entire life. And his business was auto body, right? So if your car got into an accident, they would bring it to his shop and get it fixed. And so to see that we generated income as a family from that was huge for me because I didn't realize that was possible. I was taught to just get a job and go to school and work for somebody else. So that was huge to see that. And to this day, to see that we can derive income from our own experiences, our own ideas.
Well, we're coming to the close and we've got 2 questions from the audience. I'm going to see if I can combine them in a way that'll get the answers as we begin to close out. So one of the questions is about being a Black woman entrepreneur and the first steps to take, but during a period of unemployment. And then the other question is, are there future trends or that Black women should consider in creating a business? And now we have 2 other questions, but I'll stop with those 2 for now.
I saw the first question and, you know, I was thinking about it, you know, what are the first steps to take towards your business? And I think one of them is definitely writing out your business plan, and also start talking to people about what you want to do. Speak it out into the world, speak it to people, because you never know who has a connection or resource that could be helpful to you. Like there are initiatives in the DC area, like the Small Business Development Center. They can help you solidify that business plan, and, you know, start getting your idea off the ground. So start writing it out and start talking to people about it. That would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I would say part of the first step would be definitely information. When we started a bookstore, I had already been in the book industry for many years, but looking around and looking at the landscape and seeing, is there a need for this, right? There's bookstores, but are there enough Black bookstores that really hone in? But doing the research, I know my husband specifically went into several stores and counted how many Black books were on a shelf, how many books were even on a shelf, period. And so when we opened up our stores, what does that look like inventory wise? What does that look like investment wise? What does that look like money wise? And so taking those moments to step out and go kind of research your industry, your field, and see if that really makes sense. And I think too, if you're passionate about it, not just going out and doing it for the money will always come, but not just making money be that financial reason why you're going to do it. And I know unemployment makes you feel like, I got to do this just to make the money. But if you do it just because of the money, it will be fleeting, or you'll be tired, or you'll be upset, or you'll be, disappointed when you have to wake up time and time again when you don't see it's working. There were many periods of time that we didn't see it working. So money was not the impetus, but being passionate about something that we felt made a difference. That was the first step, kind of searching our minds. What is it that we want to do that allowed us to combine business, our culture, and community all in one? And books allow that to come to fruition for us. So really looking around and researching your industry, but then also finding out what you are passionate about, what's going to make you get up when you don't want to get up.
And one last question from the audience, because there are a couple of them out there, but if you could name one resource that Black women could use if they were trying to start their own business, what would it be that a Black woman could use? Any resource?
I would say grants are huge, right? We just received a couple of our grants. There's funding out there, especially now. A lot of people, I don't want to say it's cool to be Black, but I feel like that a lot of times now because a lot of the things that are happening in the world, but there is funding out there when it comes to grants that people want to support some of these businesses. But grants is one, and then also the small business development centers in a lot of areas. I think Howard, I can't remember if they just opened up one on their campus too, but going out, a lot of those services are free. And a lot of times they feel like, we don't have access to this or that, and we don't in some things. But then there are arenas where we can go and we can learn from other women from these small business development centers that can really lend resources on how to budget, on how to really receive capital, on how to even schedule out your day. Some of those forums are there that can help. And I'll say this one last thing. It's funny, I'm on Facebook, and there are tremendous Facebook groups that are full of Black entrepreneurs that share, that are transparent, that you can ask questions in, that have been a wealth full of information for me. And one of them is called TSP, Traffic, Sales, and Profit. It's a group that if you're an entrepreneur that you can go to and get ideas about how to start and ask questions of other entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Elizabeth, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I would just add, there are also women business centers. So I know DC has one, Maryland has one, I'm sure Virginia has one as well. So just connecting to the Women's Business Center in your area is probably important. They have workshops. Again, most of the things are free. So that's a great way. There's also mentorship that folks offer. There's a free mentorship program called SCORE. So these are business professionals who have decades of experience who are now contributing their time to helping new businesses get off the ground. So take advantage of all the free resources that are out there.
Well, I want to thank both of you. We're sort of at the end of our time. For those of you who joined us today, today is Giving Tuesday. It's a global giving day. It's a global day of giving. And it's a day to support nonprofits making a true impact in our communities. If you enjoyed your time with us today, please consider making a donation to the Women's Foundation today by visiting wawf.org/give. Your donations will go towards programs such as the one I mentioned earlier, our Rockstar program, where we're doing participatory grant making and allowing young women who are 12 to 24 up to $2,000 to invest in their own entrepreneurial ideas and community projects. Elizabeth and Ramunda, we're just so grateful to have both of you today. Again, as I said at the top of this, I was so excited to be able to have both of you come and talk to us and share with our community how you are breaking barriers for women and girls of color and creating pathways for Black women to be successful and find hope, especially as entrepreneurs. I want to thank you both. You've said so much today that I think anyone who is on a part of our audience can take away with them and use with them, both in terms of becoming an entrepreneur or just in terms of their personal life. We are indebted to you, both of you, for what you are doing for our community and what you are doing to ensure that wealth continues to grow for us in this community. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who joined us today for the Washington Area Women's Foundation Ask Her series around the power of Black women entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you.